Corona Heights is a cool little area in San Francisco that's connected to a place called the Randall Museum. It's right below Buena Vista Park and just a little southeast of Golden Gate Park. You won't run into many tourists, probably just a few families and dogs, but you will get a fantastic panoramic view of San Francisco. It really gives you a good perspective on the lay of the land. The top is crowned with a rock formation, which is pretty fun to climb around to get the best views. Although it can get a little windy up there, so dress warmly. All told, it's a nice little scenic point off the beaten path, and will make for a perfect photograph for your Christmas card or Facebook profile pic or whatever. Dear Pigeon, a lot of hubbub has been given, rightly or wrongly, to the way color has been handled in Adobe CS3, especially Illustrator, where color palettes can be generated by the computer for you. I hope that the information presented has always been readily available to anyone who studies color theory, and that the opinions expressed are a gut reaction to what is a new toy productivity tool. Frankly, I still prefer my color wheel. To draw a parallel, vector artwork has never replaced in any measure or score hand-drawn work. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think this and other fancy doodads within these programs will have a significant effect on the necessity of design training? And this comes to us from Kevin from Atlanta, Georgia. Yeah, so this is pretty interesting. Adobe Illustrator CS3 lets you change color values on the fly and can suggest different complements to your color selections to produce nice little palettes. And some designers are all up in arms because you don't really have to understand the inner workings of color theory to get a decent looking color scheme. And it's like, oh no, amateur designers going to know all the secrets to split complementary colors, it's the end of the world. But I think it's a sweet little tool, and that's just what it is, a tool. It's not coming up with your concepts, it's not arranging your type in images, and it's not always going to look good 100% of the time. It's just something to experiment and play around with. It's making suggestions, and it's still up to you and your client whether that cerulean blue looks simply cool or it has a deeper conceptual meaning tied to the brand. So yeah, I think these fancy little widgets are okay, and we're probably going to see a lot more of them in the future for stuff like font selection or grid placement. But before designers grab their torches and pitchforks and run up to the Old Town Windmill, remember that good ideas from real people are the lifeblood of good design. A design without a concept is just wallpaper. Wii Sports has been out for almost a year now, but it still gets a lot of play at my place. If by play you mean humiliating my friends to tears, I'm looking at you, Greg Hack and Scott Schiller. Anyway, in tennis, if you want to play on a different court, after the screen goes black when selecting your characters, hold down the 2 button on your remote. Now you'll find yourself playing on the blue practice court. I think it's a little easier to see the ball this way, and it just mixes stuff up a little. And you can also mess around with the game select screen, so clicking on one of your players and turning them into a shadow with a question mark symbol means you'll get a random computer helper to play along with. This might make things a little easier for beginner players. And just for the sake of being weird, click on the players on the opposite side of the court on the game select screen and you can control all 4 characters, essentially playing yourself. Now that's a real challenge. Greg and Scott, not so much, but yeah. Hey Dave, did you ever do freelance for a while and then work full-time? If so, do you have thoughts on either situations? The pros and cons of each, things like that. Thanks and keep up with the show, I love it. Nicole from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. So that's a good question, and I think a lot's going to depend on the particular person and job opportunities that you're faced with, but I enjoy doing both. So here's some general pros and cons of each. On the freelance side of things, you've got flexibility. You can determine your own hours, work environment, and so on. Diversity, you can seek out diverse, interesting projects with a lot of potential for creative freedom. Communication, usually it's just you and the client and there's no chain of command to go through to get approval on things. On the downside though, benefits, healthcare, 401k plans, things like that. You've got to figure out and deal with that stuff on your own. And work-life balance, it takes some discipline to maintain, especially if you're working from home. Now on the full-time side of things, you've got group interaction. You'll learn a lot working with smart people, and it's a good experience. Project scope, with a full team of people with various skill sets, you can often tackle larger scale projects, usually for more prominent clients. And a steady paycheck. You know what your annual salary is, you know that you'll be able to pay the rent and put food on the table. But on the downside, project selection, many times as a designer you won't have much say on what projects you're working on. And the usual work stuff, the daily commute, office politics, the guy who doesn't put down the lid in the restroom, that sort of thing. But you know what, these are broad generalizations and they're definitely not set in stone. So my completely uneducated opinion is if you're just starting out in the design world, go the full-time route first. You'll learn so much in terms of client interaction, project management, budgets, timelines, design techniques, and so on as you build up your own portfolio. It's good to gain that knowledge and experience right away. And hey, if there's time, you can always do a little freelance project on the side here and there. Sometimes people say to me, "Hey Dave, when was the Battle of Hastings fought?" And I say, obviously it's 1066. Hello, where were you in 9th grade world history? But then other times, people ask how I go about making digital illustrations. Well, I use a Wacom 6x8 N203 tablet. This bad boy runs for about $275 on Amazon. It essentially replaces a mouse with the live area on the tablet corresponding to the dimensions of your screen. Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of a learning curve involved. For me, it was sort of like learning how to draw all over again. But I think it's worth the effort. Digital illustration is a nice tool to add to your skill set, and it's fun experimenting and playing around with. I like drawing in Photoshop, but there are a lot of illustration or painting programs out there. Alright, so what I usually do is sketch out a very rough outline of whatever's in my head, just to get it out there. In this case, I'll be drawing that little bird with headphones from the title screen. So I'll keep it loose and messy, just worrying about the general composition instead of the more specific details. Then I'll put that layer at like 25% transparency, make a new layer, zoom into the canvas, and focus just on the outlines now. Once that's done, I'll start doing some initial coloring, and then just keep on adding layers and layers of color, shadows, and semi-transparent details until I get the look that I want. Finally, I like to add textures to the piece to make it feel a little less flat. Just scan in or take a photo of an interesting texture to use, like I found this old cooking pan in our kitchen. It's probably been around since 1900 and might puncture your windpipe with rusted metallic shards if you dare to bake cookies on it, but it's a pretty interesting and aged-looking surface. So I snap a photo and bring it on top of my piece, and then fool around with the blending modes and transparencies until it looks halfway decent. So there. And maybe I add a little vignette action to finish it off. And then I add some papyrus and a sweet drop shadow. Okay, just kidding. But that's the way I do it, but there's really no right or wrong way to go about digital illustration. Everyone has their own unique illustration style and techniques, and you should just have fun with it and see what you can come up with. Hello Pigeon, do you think your liberal arts education helps with your design or creative process? How many designers have a liberal arts education as well as an art design school experience? If you could go back in time, would you have gone to an art school straight from high school? Jenna from Annandale, Virginia. Alright, well first, if I could travel back in time, I wouldn't go to school. I'd probably go back to the Jurassic era and ride on the backs of pterodactyls. But that's just me. But for the sake of argument, I'll play along. So, this is an age-old question because there's no one universally accepted path to becoming a designer. You want to be a lawyer, go to law school. You want to be a doctor, you go to med school. But for a designer, there's a lot of different ways you can go about it, and solid arguments can be made for pretty much any direction. Talk to designers and you'll get a variety of responses. Some went to undergrad or graduate school, some were largely self-taught and learned through books or online tutorials, and some just jumped right into internships or started working with the studio right away. But for me personally, I enjoyed the route that I took. So while my undergrad majors were music and English, I also got to take classes in everything from astronomy to public speaking. And also drew cartoons for our college newspaper, and also got involved with a couple of student organizations and played in a band on the side. So it was a good, well-rounded experience, and it's great because I didn't really know what I wanted to do for a living when I was in college. And it was only then, after that, when I was able to narrow my career focus to design and went to a graduate school that specialized in that area. But yeah, I still draw from those college experiences all the time, and I think it was a necessary step, for me at least, figuring things out. Hope that helps a little. On a Mac, press Control, Option, Command 8, and it will make an inverse image, sort of like a photo negative, of everything on the screen. This is good for tricking people into thinking that their computers are broken. And if you don't want to hear that usual little squishy noise when you're turning the volume up and down the keyboard, just hold down Shift at the same time. Bye-bye, squishy sound! Metroid Prime Corruption just came out for the Nintendo Wii this past week, and as expected, it's freaking awesome. Instead of just pressing buttons, this time around you're aiming, grabbing, flicking, and swinging the remote and nunchuck around, which, along with the incredible art direction, creates a sense of immersion that I haven't experienced before with a video game. The control works, and it's just insanely fun. The best part of the Metroid series is always the exploration, solving puzzles, finding secret passageways, and getting new abilities that let you explore even more. And this third installment builds upon that time-tested gameplay. But I probably don't even need to talk about it because if you have a Wii and like Nintendo franchises, this is a must-have. Now all you have to do is make sure to pre-order Super Mario Galaxy for November and Super Smash Bros. Brawl for December. Hi Dave, thanks for sharing your work with the world and for the podcast. Both have been inspirational and are appreciated. My partner and I started a small video production firm about 2 years ago. Things have been going fine, however in this area of the world it seems as though the bar is set very low in terms of creativity. Thus, we end up with finished projects that clients are very happy with, but don't do much for our reel or attracting bigger clients. I've thought of working up a show reel, but when we get into a meeting, folks inevitably want to see what we've done for other companies. So I feel a bit stuck. Any advice? Thanks. And this is Mike Smith from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So yeah, I hear you, and I would definitely work on a few personal creative side projects to get that creativity in real to the level that you want. Otherwise, it's going to be an endless cycle of the same old thing. So I'd say go ahead, make a few fake 30-second commercial spots or movie title sequences or whatever you feel passionate about and you can pour your creativity into. And even if conservative companies have set the creative bar pretty low, the only way to raise it is to show them what you're truly capable of. And then I'd say take your videos, stick them up on YouTube or other video sites online, and you never know what opportunities might come your way. In Flash, you can achieve a 3D effect even though you're only animating shapes in 2D. This is based off a technique I learned from a tutorial a couple years ago by Chris Georginas from mudbubble.com. This guy is absolutely amazing. He's pretty much the best Flash character animator I've ever seen. So let's look at the frame by frame of this bird. Basically, everything from the left side moves right and gets bigger, and everything from the right side moves left and gets smaller. So the tail moves to the left and gets scrunched together, the white wing outline gets a little smaller and moves up into the right, the legs move slightly to the right, and the body gains a little perspective and gets fatter. The far wing starts out small and hidden behind the body, but gradually gets bigger and rotates into view. One eye gets skinnier, while the other peeks around the corner of the head and gets fatter, making it look like the head is rotating. The triangles of the beak fade in and change shape to fit the perspective. It looks a little weird with the frame by frame here, but this animation takes place over 15 frames in a 30 frame per second piece, so it's only like half a second and you don't notice it as much. So there you have it, faking a 3D perspective just from slight changes in the size and position of simple shapes. When you do it all at once, everything works together and gives a nice little effect. As a student today, I found that design is so vast that it's hard to get one's point across. As a grad student, did you compare yourself with other students, and in doing so, did you suffer from peer pressure from them? If so, how did you counter it and make your voice heard from the crowd? Thanks, and this is Jay from Wales in the UK. So yeah, I was very lucky to go to school with a few hundred creative designers, illustrators, art directors, photographers, copywriters, and instructors, and they definitely inspired and pushed me to work harder than I would have if it had just been me on my own. It's okay to be a little competitive for that reason. And now all those guys are out in the working world, so they continue to inspire me and push me to work harder when I see all the cool projects and stuff that they're doing. So it's something that never really ends, even after school. As far as making your own voice stand out from the crowd, I wouldn't spend too much time stressing over it or overanalyzing it. If you play to your own personal strengths, interests, and influences, and develop those into great ideas, chances are that your voice and work are going to stand out all on their own, without trying to force it to do that just for the sake of being different. Well, that's it for this month's episode of Carrier Pigeon. Hopefully you enjoyed the new short attention span format. If you've got a question for the next episode, feel free to send it in to pigeon@oksamurai.com and we'll do our best to answer it. But until then, thanks for watching and take care. Bye.